My next Patreon question comes from Benjamin, who wants to know my preference for a specific type of movie. Which type of film do you prefer, color or black and white? That's an interesting question. To be honest, I've never found myself preferring one over the other. Both have their strong qualities, and in many movies it makes sense why the filmmakers chose to go that route. Of course, in the early days of cinema, black and white was the only option. Although you did have directors like Georges Méliès, who individually colored the black and white print in a process called tinting. Then, when color films started being produced more frequently, the filmmakers found appropriate ways to utilize the technique. The Wizard of Oz is a particularly famous example of the way it moves from black and white to color, or rather from the sepia-toned Kansas to the Technicolor Oz. The sequence where Dorothy steps out of her house into Munchkinland must have been an amazing sight for audiences back in 1939. And even today, it still holds up as an incredible effect. Something I've long been fascinated by is seeing the look of color film through the decades. Movies from the 1940s have a specific look to them, as do ones from the 50s and 60s and 70s and so on. As film technology continued to evolve, filmmakers found new ways to utilize color. I recently rewatched Dick Tracy, which has to be one of the most striking looking films ever made. Warren Beatty decided to emulate the color palette of a comic strip in order to bring the world of Dick Tracy to life on the screen. The result is a unique-looking movie that has an impressive merging of two mediums. Of course, black and white has its advantages too. Nowadays, it's primarily used to pay homage to classic film. Tim Burton has done it successfully a few times. With Ed Wood, he felt it would look odd to see Ed and his cohorts in color, seeing as their movies were in black and white. By making Ed Wood in black and white, it strangely does feel like being transported back to 1950s Hollywood and the B-movie studios. Meanwhile, Frankenweenie went with black and white as it fit with the setting and the various monsters that populate the movie. It's interesting we often associate 1950s films with black and white, seeing as there were many color films made in that era, including epics like Ben-Hur and the Ten Commandments, and the melodramas of Douglas Sirk. Another example of a filmmaker using black and white to brilliant effect is Steven Spielberg with Schindler's List. Spielberg felt color was the wrong approach to tell the story, as he feared making the film too pretty, and he even threw away all of his filmmaking techniques when deciding to make the movie. The few smatterings of color in Schindler's List, like the girl in the red coat, are made more powerful because of how we get used to the black and white imagery in the rest of the film. In some cases, black and white is used for budgetary reasons. Kevin Smith filmed Clerks in black and white because that was what his little independent film could afford. However, this decision also works in the movie's favor, as it makes it almost look like security camera footage of these convenience store clerks. I will admit, there are cases where I don't entirely understand the decision to go black and white. The Colombian film, Embrace of the Serpent, got permission to film in the Amazon, one of the most beautiful and colorful places on the planet. But then it was filmed in black and white, which felt like such a waste. There was also a black and white cut of Mad Max Fury Road released, which confused me as one of the film's strong points was its use of color. In any case, black and white can be very striking and also adds a lot of character to older films as well as newer ones. I know I cannot imagine, say, Citizen Kane or Dr. Strangelove or The Gold Rush or Some Like It Hot in color. Meanwhile, color film has its advantages too. Both are an art and can produce some spectacular images. Let me know your own thoughts on the subject in the comments, and thank you for your question, Benjamin.